And there we go. Welcome everybody to the Lifeboat Academy weekly update session for January the 29th, 2024. And we have a slightly unusual update this week because we are reporting back on the first interactive sessions of our annual planning and sort of transitioning to the next step, which is forming up the guilds and creating some action plans. So this is actually a very exciting time to be here and to be involved. So welcome everyone. And we start as always with, oh, actually, great. In case this is the first time that you are coming in contact with the Lifeboat Academy, we are a model of resilience and regeneration at the person, place, and community level. And for us, a lifeboat is a personal, place-based resilience network. It is developing the relationships that already exist in your life to figure out how we can provide mutual support for each other as the waters might get a little choppy coming up. So we all need our own local lifeboats. And for us, it's more than just any individual lifeboat, but it's about creating a fleet of lifeboats that stay connected, where we can share resources, learning, and moral support, so that we can all support each other in getting through and even thriving whatever might be coming down the road. And we start our work always by starting with the land, putting the land in the center, acknowledging the land. And we do so because the land was here before we were. The land will be here after we are long gone. And we only exist as human beings because the land caused us to be here. And so when we acknowledge the land, we are acknowledging our interdependence with all that is, and the incredible, constantly renewing, constantly changing, constantly evolving reality of our living world. And in doing so, we recognize our debt of gratitude to indigenous cultures who have developed this wisdom over time immemorial on every different continent, except Antarctica, and who have retained this wisdom at great cost to themselves in the face of colonialism and oppression, which is ongoing. And so when we acknowledge the land and the wisdom of the indigenous cultures, we also acknowledge our responsibility in making right things that have gone wrong, and correcting and healing the relationships that have been harmed, and both to our human relations and to our more than human relations. And so I also acknowledge that I am coming from WSÁNEĆ territory, on the traditional lands of the WSÁNEĆ, who have been here for time immemorial and are still here. And I also nod to all of the indigenous cultures who are still out there, still surviving, and still with a lot to teach us. So with that, we also give everyone an opportunity. We've got a big crew today, which is very exciting. And we start by just going around and why are you here today? What has your attention? What are you curious about? And the circle, as I see it, is Ronnie, Roland, Sandra, Pam, and April. And then back to me. So Ronnie, what has your attention at the moment?
I'm really excited about the guilds. A lot of thought and heart went into developing them into, what's good enough for now, safe enough to try. And I'm really excited to see who feels drawn to which one or multiple, and what kinds of action plans we can come up with in the next couple of weeks. Over to Roland.
I think that one of the things that's really valuable for me with the planning is starting big, overarching ideas, and then using that to bring us to actual things that we're going to do. So this is what I'm most curious about for today is going through what we've done and see what the next steps are to be able to get to that point where we will have clear direction for the year, because it is hopefully it will be, I'm hoping for a good and active and grounding year. And I've forgotten who the next person is. So to the next person.
Sandra.
Hi. It's been a while since I've connected with you all, and I was not feeling really connected because I'm far away and not really involved in what you're doing there in the land, but I have been really busy. I had applied for a farm sit position on Salt Spring that didn't quite happen and got delayed, and then last minute dumped in and November, and then started December 10th, and I'm there until April 30th. So there I'm now, testing myself. It's a big experiment for me to see, how does this feel to be living on the land? I'm taking care of like 38 chickens, dogs, cats, numerous outbuildings to monitor, greenhouses. When we had the snow, because we're up Mount Maxwell, I had to like clear snow and like, oh, can I physically do this? And yes, it was very empowering. Feels good to be on the land. And then after, I wasn't able to attend your planning sessions, but I watched them on video, and I was like, wow, really inspired about the process and how much I could learn from that, and just the network that you're creating. And I don't know what's going to happen this year, but I'm for myself, but I just want to be involved. And like Ronnie, I'm kind of excited about the guilds. That's the next step. Sorry, over to Pamela, right?
I'm sorry to have missed that last bit. There was a domestic interruption. And already, I mean, I'm just impressed with what you are doing, Sandra. That's amazing. And I come in with apologies for not being entirely up to date with the previous videos for the sessions that I missed in the planning. And I guess one of the main reasons I'm here is because I'm ongoingly interested in the process and how it is you set up the structures for doing what it is you're doing, and always keeping an eye out to how it intersects with things and whether or not, I mean, shit, Sandra, you were just amazing in your jumping into what it is you're doing, and I'm still just not getting a hold of people. Not that comparisons are necessary or relevant to the process, but I keep thinking about those connections that are still left dangling. So I subject myself to my fumbling process and pass it over to April.
Thanks, Pamela, and good morning, everybody. I come to you from the ancestral unceded territories of the Shuswap Nation on the Sunshine Coast, and what I'm immersed in the process of this planning, and luckily for me, all my favorite tools and processes are being used. So there's an element of play for me in this, and I'm delighted to see the process unfolding as I was pretty sure it could. And I am, well, a social experimenter at heart, I guess. So I'm just really liking being part of the ongoing plan, I suppose. And on to Ben.
Yeah, I think what has my attention right now is the process and the possibility. And one of our many mottos around here is building the lifeboat is the lifeboat. The process, it's all process. And and one of the things that I think is a good concept from Christianity and is, you know, priests being able to give absolution. And I would like in my surrogate job to give absolution to everybody for whatever involvement you've had and managed and or not. Because that's what this is all about. Resilience is about doing the best we can with what we got and being and I think a real powerful lesson that is taking root for me is just being gentle and gentle with ourselves, gentle with each other. And we're going to talk about this, but you know, you can't push a rope. Things take the time they take. Everything takes longer than we think, and no plan has ever happened the way we planned it. And that's just how it goes. And so how can we be, like April was saying, how can we be playful with that? How can we maintain a sense of lightness and playfulness as we move forward? And, you know, there's all sorts of things to be excited about, and some of them will happen and some of them won't. And part of the curiosity is I wonder which ones will happen. So with that in mind, yeah, absolution all around. We're all doing great. And I'm also reminded of the Michael Moore quote of a choir can hold an infinitely long time because we can all take a breath at a different moment. And so when we work together, if we've got a big enough choir, it's all good. Take a breath when you need it. So that's our introduction. And just to give us a sense of where we are, over to Ronnie.
So we had our first 3 sessions for our annual planning for 2024. They were our lessons learned and guiding principles, our resources, relationships, and goals, and most recently, our functional areas or guilds and RFPs. So we are now in guild action planning mode with this session today, talking about the different guilds that we've come up with and talking about who's interested in doing what. So we are stepping into action with all of that. And our design charrette, our second annual design charrette, is now a little over 2 weeks away. February 16th through 18th, and that's a hybrid event. So whether you can make it in person or online is all good. And keep an eye out for more details coming soon, very soon, hopefully.
Over to
Ben,
Roland.
I believe.
No, Roland.
Roland. Over to Roland.
Over to me. So just a little recap on the sessions that we've already had. Session 1 was the larger overview or the guiding principles, the ideas that are guiding us. And shout out to everyone who participated. When we say we mean you as well. So we are all a we. And so the lessons learned and the guiding principles that came through during that session, sort of bringing together the Venn diagram from the previous slide, are treating all projects as experiments. And experiments not as in let's just try this, but actually take it seriously and track them and see what happens so that we can learn from them. And recognizing the inherent intelligence of nature, that we are part of this larger system, and there's a lot of wisdom in that larger system that we can learn from in order to be able to work more smoothly with it and to be more part of it. Treating the farm as an organism composed of organs, that we are on a living, the land is alive, we are part of the land, and there are different parts to making something like the farm work. So how does it work in harmony, like a living being? Trust is the key, so be trustworthy. Self-explanatory, I think. And things take time. And a great analogy for that is trying to push rope. You can't push rope, but you can pull it. And with that, I believe that we will be talking about session 2. Anything that either Ronnie or Ben want to add to what I said? And I'll pass the floor over to the next person.
You're good, Ronnie? Okay. I think the two things that I would add is the treating the farm as the organism is also recognizing the fractal nature of it. So there are functions that happen within the farm that help the farm act as an organism, and then the farm itself is an organ in a larger system, and and it's all the way up and all the way down, and so it's all connected, and yeah, so it's all fractal. And the trust is the key is really it's all about relationships. And which is something that we keep coming back to again and again. It's all about relationships. And the key to relationships is trust and being trustworthy. So at session 2, Sandra, over to you.
It just struck me when you talked about guiding principles, and I was wondering about flowing with the organic nature of cycles and process, because process is so important to have that as one of the principles about the relationship with the process. I'm not sure how that would come about, but just to plant that seed.
Yeah, I think it factors in, if we have our driver statement for the Lifeboat Academy, where we elaborate a little bit on the guiding principles, and partly because of the organic nature and the fractal nature of it, is everything kind of morphs into everything else. And I think that the treat everything as an experiment is also, sometimes we say lean into the process. And one of the things about how our overarching process is the experiment, and that usually involves, there's a seasonality to that, or a cyclical nature and a seasonality to that. So that's also where then the inherent intelligence of nature also overlaps, because that's part of nature, is that it's all cycles. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
the relationship with deep time, and that slowing down, with referring to biokomalafi, that you have to slow down to make those deeper changes. So
yeah. And then that's the things take time, right? So it's one of the fun things about when we get into our agreements. It's like every agreement leads to the next agreement, leads to the next agreement, and eventually back to the first one. And it's like, yeah, that's how it works. So which is partly what we were trying to capture in session 2, where we were really looking at what are the resources, and what are the resources we have to work with, because our overarching goal for planning is what's the best we can do in 2024 with the resources that we have available. So it's useful to know what are those resources. And some of those are really easy, like the physical resources. We can kind of just do an inventory, which we have. But some of them are much harder to track, like our relationships and knowledge, and pools of experience and things like that. So we really spent a lot of time in session 2 doing some relationship mapping, some sort of asset mapping, which is still very much an ongoing incomplete process. But ultimately, we wanted to use that information to get to some goals for the year. And we are still working on that. We'll talk a little bit about that in terms of the priorities for the coming week or two. And but some of the goals that we've been coming up with are, as a focus for this year, are building at least one or as many cabins as we can, and other support facilities, so that we can host more people on the farm. Onboarding people, we still have to figure out what that goal is, how many we think we can onboard. Doing some soil inoculation experiments, thinking about the very foundation of the health of the farm. Thinking about how we can advance our reconciliation goals. So thinking about allyship training, or ITFL, Indigenous Tools for Living training, things that help us become better partners with the local Indigenous communities, and some concrete goals for the farm itself physically, getting pigs on pasture, getting the goats pregnant, starting to move towards dairying, and of course gardens, planning and figuring out what's going to go in the gardens, and some of our and of course making the farm available to woofers, interns, and other lifeboat builders. So figuring out how we can put our resources in place so that we can start to make progress on the different social impact goals that we have aligned ourselves with and have committed ourselves to in our articles of incorporation. And like I said, it's still very much a work in progress. And over to Ronnie and Roland. Is there anything that you want to add? Ronnie, over to you. Are you good? Roland, anything you want to add?
I think that's a really great explanation of what we're thinking about as goals. One of the goals is to complete the purchase of the property, so that a lot of these other goals can continue. And yeah, so there are some of these that can continue because there's the Lifeboat Academy as a whole, and then there's the purchasing of the property. Anyway, that's what I wanted to add. So that's still definitely a priority, is to be able to purchase the property so that we can start doing all of this wonderful stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And actually, one thing that came clear to me during our last session was sometimes we have a hard time describing the relationship between the property here in the Spalding Valley on Cedillas and the Lifeboat Academy, the larger network. And the way that it crystallized for me is we take care of the land to heal the people, and we heal the people to take care of the land. And that we recognize that there's lots of ways of describing it, but there's something about decolonizing ourselves, reconnecting ourselves with the land in a more meaningful way. And that can only happen in working with the land directly in those material ways. And so we do it in part to take care of this parcel, but we take care of this parcel because it also heals those who come in contact with it. And then we send them out in our mycelial network so that they can then plant themselves wherever they end up, wherever they are, and start healing the land there, and so on and so on and so on. So now over to Ronnie to talk about the guilds as we are conceiving them at the moment. So over to you, Ronnie.
So in session 3, we did a deep dive into a metaphor that was very helpful in figuring out the guilds moving forward. And the metaphor is the land and the Lifeboat Academy project as an organism. So we were thinking about the different parts of the body of an organism and how that relates to, the practical and communal aspects of working together. So it was a really, really awesome session. And basically, and I'll go through the 5 guilds that we came up with. So the first guild we're calling, and these are all working titles, by the way, right? Everything is alive. Everything is a living, breathing document. Guild 1, we're calling Heart Work and Philosophy. Guild 2 is Principles and Governance. Guild 3, Finance and Legal. Guild 4 is Farm, Food and Housing. And Guild 5 is Outreach and Network. And so I'm just going to go a bit further into each of the guilds. Heart Work and Philosophy, of course, corresponds to the heart of the organism. So we're thinking about relationality. How do we relate to ourselves and each other and the land? Reaching in, that more inner work and holding space for that. Experimental spirituality, trying things on, playing with theories and ideas to figure out what we're really talking about. Working out our philosophies, grief work, conviviality. What is it that brings aliveness to ourselves and to the group? Personal healing and re-indigenizing work. And then Guild 2 corresponds somewhat to the immune system of the organism. So principles and governance, which include our onboarding process, values and conflict resolution, restorative practices, restorative justice, how we make decisions, how we govern and structure ourselves using sociocracy, as well as peer-to-peer reconciliation and also support. So thinking about the larger network of people who are we're all connected. So how do we maintain healthy relationships with one another? And then finance and legal, I think is pretty straightforward. I call it the devil is in the details guild, just keeping track of numbers and legal documents and all of the things that are associated with not only running the farm, but purchasing the property, running the co-op or the B Corp or whatever it's going to end up being. So all of those nitty-gritty tasks. And then Guild 4 corresponds to the body of the organism. This is, in a way, the meat and potatoes, you could say, the farm, food, and housing. So all the physical stuff that we all need to survive and thrive, and then how the relationships between each of those things work. And then Guild 5 is outreach and network, including the lifeboat network. So these are sort of the tentacles of the organism that reach out into the wider world to talk to people, build relationships, bring people in and have them be engaged in mutually beneficial ways, as well as mentorship among folks in the lifeboat network. So sharing information and resources and support, as well as reconciliation between communities at large. Back to Ben, I believe.
I was trying to unmute and I
Oh, anything
forwarded.
anyone wants to add? Sorry, before we move on.
Roland, do you have anything you want to throw in there? I think it got covered really well. And we will have at the end, we'll come back to April. It looks like you want to say something, but we'll also come back at the end and have like questions as well. But April, over to you.
Well, I was just thinking about the link between our sort of asset map and relationship map and then the guilds. And the link is that we come with certain things to offer, or we have certain bodies of knowledge to pull on, but they can be distributed in different ways throughout the guilds. So it's not a one-on-one relationship, but it is an interweaving, I suppose, over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's important to remind ourselves we have in natural systems, which we are trying to emulate, it's a Venn diagram, not an org chart. So it's not a silo. It's you know, all of these things connect. Like obviously there's a connection between heart work and governance. You know, there's something about the process of how we are with each other, how we connect to each other as people, and then also how we make decisions together. And that, of course, you know, it layers down. So there's interconnection between all of these things. And so we're really trying in the guilds, what we're trying to do is identify the core work of each of the guilds, recognizing that one of the jobs of the guilds is also to identify where there's the overlap. You know, where do you hand off? Where do you connect for information and support? Just want to check. Okay. So the focus then and this is kind of a weekly or a fortnightly focus. The next up is developing the RFPs, the requests for proposals that each of the guilds have to work on, and also starting to recruit people into the guilds to actually do some work around them. The goal is that by the time of the charrette on the 16th through 18th, that the guilds will be presenting, here's what we think our action plan for 2024 looks like at the high level. And that means that we can spend most of our time at the charrette talking about those interconnections, talking about where there can be mutual support, where there might be some potential conflict, and right sizing things to make sure that our goals fit the resources and the capacity that we currently have to the best of our ability. And part of the RFP is really kind of divvying up the work that we've done so far. So we've identified resources, we've identified goals. It's basically assigning them. This is using the principles of sociocracy, of delegating authority from the whole to the different functional areas. So what are the resources that the Guild has to work with? What are the goals or expectations that we're hoping that they'll address? And who is interested in working in that area? And then each of the guilds can take some time to come up with their plan. And so that's the big focus. And then also behind the scenes, we'll be working on all of the logistical arrangements as well for the charrette itself, making sure that we blend. I am proud of the work that we did last year in making it a hybrid event, and this year we're trying to think about how we can make it even better, so that whether you're here in person or away and joining us remotely, you still have an equally valuable and positive experience. Recognizing the technical challenges involved in that. And anyhow, so that's what we're going to be working on. So over to you, Roland.
I just wanted to, I have a mild allergy to acronyms, and I just felt I needed to clarify that RFP stands for Request for Proposal. So that's what that stands for. We want to collaborate. And we have office hours to help make that happen. So the office hours are open if you want to meet with us, or if you want to join in with co-working time. So you can join us on Zoom. And this week, it's open for Zooming on Tuesdays and Thursdays, January 30th and February 1st, from 10 to 11:30 a.m. And you can sign up for office hours to let us know that you want to join us via Zoom using the Calendly link. And the Calendly link is here on the screen. It's also in our Linktree and Instagram. It's also in the weekly email updates, and it's likely in other places too. I suspect it may also be on the YouTube channel. So all of those are also places to explore. And with that, I cede it to the next person.
I guess that's back to me. Yeah, and we will probably be expanding our office hours. We kind of went on slightly reduced office hours over the holidays, and then we just we kept them somewhat reduced when we came back in because of where we were in the planning process. But we will use our communication channels to keep people up to date. I have an idea for making it easier for people to do drop-ins to office hours as well. So again, the links will work and will get updated so that you'll have more appropriate information or more current information if we change anything. I think you can always, if you're interested, you can always contact us at friends@lifeboat.academy, and that will get you in touch with us, and we can get you whatever you need when you need it. And of course, you can also visit and we haven't adequately celebrated this. We have a website, an actual, honest, full website, thanks to David Oshima, who has done amazing work. And it is up and live, and yeah, that was exciting.
And
So, yeah.
the address is where it says web page. The address literally is lifeboat.academy. That's all. There's no .com or anything like that. So it's the same address as we had before for our landing page, but now it will bring you to our actual website. There's still some. We're still working on it. It's new to us, but we're really excited about it.
And
Mhm.
it's a really great example of how we walk our talk, because this website was an incredibly emergent process where things took time to develop and a lot of relationality and meetings and talking things through. It's been over a year in the works. So this is just a very exciting moment. And I did not want us to lose sight of how big of a deal it is. So please
Mhm.
check it out. And it will only get better from here on out. So
Mhm. Yeah, and we are hoping that it becomes our sort of hub for information and access. And so we still have a lot of tools that we'll be using, but all those tools will be more accessible from the website, including the Miro board, which is still available. The links are in multiple places, and the Miro board is really the heart of our annual process. And we'll be coming back and using the Miro board at the charrette as well. So it is still a living document, as Ronnie was saying. All of our things are alive and active and changing, and also an opportunity for people to get more involved. So I think with that, that's all we have in terms of presentation. I just want to go once through the circle again to see if there's any questions, comments, reactions, thoughts, anything good for the cause. Roland and I and Ronnie have had our turn. So next over is Sandra. Sandra, any thoughts, questions, comments?
I think this has been just a great recap and sort of just grounding where you're at in the process while connecting with you guys. So I'm not sure yet where I fit in, but I appreciate the process and being here. Thank you.
Over to Pamela.
Yeah, similarly, and just one other thing that I've been tapping into through Vanessa Andreotti's program in facing human wrongs at UVic, and she's the author of the book Hospicing Modernity. And there are a ton of tools that she has through their gesturing towards decolonizing futures collective that could be really interesting to you, possibly as ways of sort of gentling each other into a decolonizing state of being, which is, of course, another one of those processes. Anyway, tons of good stuff, and I can send you a couple of PDFs and a link to their website if you're interested. If that, I think you would be interested. I'd be interested in knowing whether or not you're interested.
I think we're interested. I knew the book, but I didn't know that there was a UVic connection.
Oh yeah, she just became the Dean of Education.
Wow.
This year.
That's, this is such a special part of the world. I keep stumbling on things that I think, wow, that's really neat. And then it turns out they're like, over there.
It's
It's really
very
cool.
interested, I think, in knowing about the Lifeboat Academy. And because I think that the collective is definitely trying to ground themselves in place. And so that's neat. I'll dig it up and throw it into the chat if I can. Sorry, I missed part of the call too. Well, here it goes.
Absolution is still in play. Over to you, April.
Well, just to say, it's exciting to have the extra connectivity of the Lifeboat Academy website up and living. That'll be a really nice place for a lot of stuff to flow through, even more than has been flowing already. And also, I just want to point out that Pamela's comment was an example of relationality and connectivity in action right there. That's something that probably happens every second of every day, but we're just becoming more and more aware of that flow of that kind of stuff and trying to map it a bit so that we can see how living it all is. That's it. Back to Ben.
Well, cool. Thanks. I'm gonna close out this this session, this update, and but stick around for our co-working time if you can. So thank you all for being here, and we look forward to connecting as we move forward. So bye until next week.
Thanks, you guys.